You're listening to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, featuring guests who take the scientific talk about food and break it down for practical use. You've heard the phrase, "You are what you eat." Come find out what that really means. Experience conversations with experts in the field of nutrition and understand the power of food for our health, well-being, and beyond. Now, here's your host, registered dietitian and nutritionist, Mathea Ford.
Hi there, it's Mathea. Welcome back to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast featuring nutrition experts who are leading the way. Using food starts today, right now, with our next guest. It's great to have Lola Scarborough on the show today. Lola, welcome to Nutrition Experts.
Hi, thank you, Mathea. I'm really glad to be here with you and your listeners.
I'm excited to have you on the show and share your expertise with my tribe. Can you start with telling my listeners a little more about you and what you do?
Sure. I've been practicing yoga for about 22 years, a long time. My particular love is Kundalini Yoga, although I do all different kinds. And I own a yoga/wellness studio in Lake City, Texas, where my husband and I have been helping people get fit, stay fit, and feel great for the last 11 years. I have a background in Ayurveda, which is a medical system used largely in India. Maybe some of your listeners have heard of it, maybe not, but it's really about lifestyle choices and choosing the right kinds of food and activities for your particular body constitution. I teach a lot of meditation to people. I work with a lot of clients who have different issues ranging from fertility issues to going through cancer treatments and everything in between. I have a couple of different certifications in Chinese herbals, and I also have a Bachelor of, it's a BA, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Wow, that's a lot. I see how you've put together, because I know yoga is all about the whole body and health. And then you've added that Ayurveda and the Chinese medicine. So let's talk about yoga for a minute. What do you think are the benefits that your customers have when they do yoga?
Well, the ones that get mentioned to me the most often is they get calmed down. The yoga practice can be very strenuous or it can be very gentle, but what it does is it takes you out of your head and into your body, giving that mind a chance to rest and giving the body a chance to move, to express itself. We spend so much of our time sitting in the car or at computers that we kind of lose contact with the tactile senses of our own body. So it gives people a chance to remember the body as a sensation machine rather than as a tool that you push through the day, that you make it do what it has to do to bring the groceries home and get the kids to school and all of the other tasks that we have.
I always notice when I do yoga that it's a wonderful stretching sensation. Even though I know it's exercise, I know I'm building muscle, but it also is just the idea that I'm holding poses for a long period of time and stretching those muscles to that have, like you said, I sit here in one spot and hunch over my computer or whatever. So it's a chance to get those opened up. How do you get those extra benefits of calming down and getting into your body?
I do. The particular type of yoga that I teach is Kundalini Yoga. I also teach Yin Yoga, but my love, my passion, what I've kind of dedicated my years of study in yoga to has been the Kundalini Yoga tradition as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And it is a yoga that incorporates all the different aspects of yoga. So asana, which is the exercise, pranayama, which is breathing techniques that work with the nervous system, that work with the constitution of the blood, that work with your ability to uptake oxygen and energy. And meditation, of course, most of our meditations in the Kundalini tradition are active, which means you may be doing some chanting, you may be doing some breath work with it. You're probably holding a mudra, which are hand positions. And there's also a level of devotion. And one of the things that I encourage my students to do is to go in, connect with their heart center, and listen for the small, still voice of their soul. Our mind takes up so much of our living space that our poor little heart soul thing never gets a chance to express itself. So we do a lot of meditation in Kundalini Yoga. And then in some of the other types of yoga we practice at the studio, we do meditation as well, but it's probably a much smaller portion of the yoga practice itself. A lot of people, when they come to yoga, they're not really looking for meditation or breath work. They're just looking for a workout using yoga postures. So we have all different kinds of students that come in with all different kinds of needs. You know, yoga's turned into like a Baskin Robbins, right? There are 50 flavors, a flavor for everybody, you know, so.
So when you're looking at a yoga studio, how do you know what kind of yoga they practice? Do they usually tell you, or does it matter that much?
Oh, it matters. It matters a whole lot. It's everything. And so, yes, usually they'll tell you, like, a lot of the vinyasa flows, you know, you're going to work through yoga postures, catching a breath in between each of the asanas. And there may be a slight amount of meditation to it, but there may not be any meditation at all. Your meditation becomes your movement in your practice. So it's very physically based. Then you get into some of the more esoteric types of yoga, like the Kundalini Yoga, where you're actually doing a mantra practice. I teach. Kundalini Yoga teachers do a lot of teaching as a part of leading a class. So you actually begin to learn some about the philosophy. You begin to learn the different benefits to the different organs, to the blood, to the nervous system, how the particular things you're doing affect the body. So there's a lot of teaching in that tradition. And other studios, you go in and, you know, you just hit it. You walk in and, man, you hit it, and you're just doing postures the whole time. And then you come out, you feel like you've had a great workout, and you have. But the essential components of yoga that make it yoga have a lot to do with meditation, with breath work, with a sense of devotion, like I said, which for us is going into our own hearts, kind of devoting our practice to our higher selves. So it really depends on the studio, but most studios are fairly transparent about what they're offering.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't even know, there was more than a couple types of yoga. And what I've heard is, hot yoga or, regular yoga. So what is hot yoga? Is that a different type of yoga completely, or is it just the temperature of the room?
It's the temperature of the room, and different hot yogas use different types of practices. My husband, who really loves hatha, loves the physical component of yoga, heads up our hot yoga division. Hot yoga, if it's done properly, can be beneficial. If it's done in a room that's too hot, where they push you too hard, is probably contraindicated for a lot of people because it's hard on the adrenals, and people will go into heat exhaustion. And they'll feel great when they leave, but that's because they're delirious. So it's really good to, before you go into a hot yoga studio, to understand what the temperature is, what the humidity is, what a safe heat index is. But it is basically a workout yoga. And that's its primary focus, is to do a workout, only the temperature is elevated.
So you've mentioned meditation multiple times, and I would just really like to hear more about kind of meditation outside of yoga. What are the benefits? What are some ways that people can do meditation that can be healthy for them?
A beautiful practice, if you're brand new to meditation, a beautiful practice is to find a safe and quiet space, and always do it at the same time every day, whenever possible. And you can light a candle, and, you can have a picture of Jesus or Buddha or one of your favorite teachers, or just even someone you love. Keep it really simple. Sit down, and then take your right hand and wrap it around the wrist of the left arm, and just close your eyes and count your pulse, and just breathe in and breathe out. And just focus all of your attention on your pulse. It is extremely calming. And you can start with 3 minutes a day. Meditation doesn't have to be done for an extended amount of time to bring extended benefits. Working your way up to a 9 or 11 minute a day practice is absolutely optimum. And no more than that is needed for you to get centered, to be calmed down, to have a chance to listen to that small, still voice that comes from the heart. What people find is that when they sit in meditation and they finally begin to get to a place where they can relax, people will say, well, Lola, I can't meditate. And I'm like, well, you can. And they say, but I keep having all these thoughts. And I'm like, everybody does that. And meditation is that tiny, tiny space in between thoughts. If you can just grab even those little tiny spaces, you'll find that your intuition starts talking to you. You'll find that you're calmer. You'll find that you handle stress so much better. It does not have to be complicated. You don't have to listen to any type of a recording or anything else. You can just sit down, wrap those fingers around that left wrist, and just listen to the beat of your own pulse. Connect with your heart. Slow your breathing down. And every time your thoughts wander, just come back to the beating of the pulse. It's that simple.
And then from that, like you said, you get the calming, you get the centered, and you start to, what else starts to happen?
Well, the nervous system begins to, I call it, refurbish itself. Most of us are pretty high strung because we live with so much stress, and we stay so high strung, we don't even realize how high strung we actually are until we start calming down. And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize how stressed out I've been. I didn't realize I'm walking around holding my breath. I didn't realize how fast I get irritable or sad or depressed or whatever it is for you. And that's another thing that people tell me when they come to the studio and they start doing yoga. They say, I didn't realize really where I was at. And so it begins to refurbish or rebuild the nervous system. Even if you're sitting there and your thoughts veer off and you bring them back, your thoughts veer off, you bring them back, your thoughts veer off, you bring them back. That's meditation. And the nervous system actually has a chance to begin to rest and to renew itself.
That's amazing. I love that you said meditation is the tiny space between your thoughts. That is probably very true.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned you've been trained in Ayurveda. Can you talk about what that is and where it comes from?
Yes. Ayurveda is a system of health that comes from India. It's estimated to be over 5,000 years old. There are all kinds of medical treatises that kind of govern and outline the different treatments that Ayurveda uses for different diseases, including diabetes, all kinds of cancer, epilepsy, you name it. All of these things that we know about in terms of disease in the West, well, they've been going on in the bodies of human beings for a really long time. And so Ayurveda has its own methodology and its own approach and system for maintaining health, which is the focus of Ayurveda, but then working with disease if disease happens. It's a herbal system, although now in India, Ayurvedic practitioners also go through Western medical training as well as the more traditional Ayurvedic training. So in Ayurveda, one of the things that stands out, and it's a lot like Chinese medicine in this way, is that when you come in, part of figuring out what is going on for you is the person, the doctor, sits across from you and will often take detailed notes on what you eat, how you sleep, the state of your relationships with your family. Family is considered to be very important in Ayurveda. What kind of job you do, the sorts of stresses you're under. And then they look at the tongue. Same thing happens in traditional Chinese medicine. The tongue is a diagnostic tool. They take your pulse. Same thing in Chinese medicine. The pulse is a diagnostic tool. And they take all of these factors and they put them together. So when they look at you, they're looking at you from the perspective of a whole person, a complete system. And then the recommendations they make for you are based on these things. So even though you may have diabetes, the types of herbals that the doctor or the Ayurvedic practitioner would prescribe for you might be very different. from the herbals that they would prescribe for someone else who had, quote, diabetes, because they have different layers of treatments for diabetes based on different symptoms and different body types.
So can you talk a little more about the body types, or whatever they're called in Ayurveda?
They're called doshas.
Okay.
And what a dosha is it's a conglomeration of traits. So I'm a Pitta Kapha dosha. And so my dosha is about 50-50 on each side. So I'm a really go-getter kind of person, but I'm also pretty laid back. So the doshas kind of describe your mental attributes, and then those are called gunas, and then your physical attributes are called doshas. So you can be someone who is one dosha in your body type and have a whole different mindset. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me that it's two different things, mentally and physically, your body.
So when you're working with someone in Ayurveda, someone's dosha might be kapha, but then their guna or their mental attributes might be vata. There are 3 body types. There's vata, there's kapha, and there's pitta. Most people will have 2 doshas that dominate the strongest. Some people are primarily one dosha, and on rare occasions, there's someone who's actually what's called tridoshic, where the doshas are equally 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so in Ayurveda, the doshas drive treatment. If you become unbalanced in a dosha, it gives rise to disease. And so the first level of management is to change lifestyle factors. So let's say, for example, I'm a very high-strung, nervous person. I'm thin. My movements are rapid. I talk a lot. I'm very quicksilver in my movements. That would be considered someone who was vata in nature. And let's say my mental attributes match my physical attributes. My nervous system would be the type of nervous system that would be more prone to things like Parkinson's and those sorts of diseases, because the dosha that you have is often an indicator of the types of diseases that you're going to develop in the event the doshas go out of balance. So I would go in, I'd see my practitioner, and I'd say, oh, I have terrible insomnia, which is a vata condition. I can't sleep at night. I'm nervous all the time. My husband says I drive him crazy because I never stop talking. Can you help me? I'm a wreck. And so the Ayurvedic practitioner or doctor would do the interview, talk to you, take your pulse, look at your tongue, and then would probably recommend, okay, you need to do slow, deep breathing. The sorts of yogic exercises that you do should be very slow, very deliberate, things that calm the nervous system down. These are the types of foods that you should eat. They'd be called vata-reducing foods, so that you kind of calm the nervous system down, calm the nervousness of the personality down. So the first line of defense in Ayurveda is changing lifestyle factors, going to bed based on your dosha, eating the sorts of foods based on your dosha, or bringing your dosha back into balance. And then herbal prescriptions or herbal remedies are usually used only if lifestyle factors don't bring what's happening under control, or if there is a disease that is already manifest. And of course, I can't do that. I'm not a doctor in the United States. I'm just an Ayurvedic practitioner. I work with people on foods, and sometimes I'll recommend herbals and things like that, but I never try to work with disease because I am not a doctor.
How do the doshas and the foods kind of go together, I guess, to eat the correct foods for your body type?
Different foods will increase the doshas. So let's go back to vata. So I have my vata clients, and she's sitting over there, and she's just so high strung. And then she tells me, I only eat a little bit of food I don't like to eat, because vatas, unlike me, Pitta, they're very, a lot of times they just don't like to eat. They eat very small amounts of food. They eat on the run, and they tend to like foods that do what's known as increasing. They say in Ayurveda that a dosha likes to increase itself. When a dosha increases, it goes out of control. So she's going to like all of the foods that increase her dosha. They're going to be salty. They're going to be dry. And what she needs to bring her dosha into balance is exactly the opposite. She needs foods that are heavier, that are calming. She needs regular meal times. She needs to eat big enough portions that she can actually calm her nervous system down. She needs to avoid anything that's cold. Travel increases vata, and a lot of vata people like nothing better than to travel. Going into cold climates increases vata. Vata people love to climb mountains. So when you begin to get the big picture of how a dosha loves to increase itself, and you see how people are living, you'll see how they're increasing the dosha, which sends them further and further out of balance. You begin to bring foods and lifestyle factors in that bring that dosha back down into a state of balance so that she's a balanced vata. So she's bright, she's light, she's intelligent, she's fun to be around, but she sleeps at night. And she's calm enough that she knows when to stop talking. And she's hungry enough that she actually stops to eat.
Is there research now that has shown what are the benefits of that type of medicine?
The Ayurvedic protocols have not really hit the Western scene for clinical testing. There's been very little clinical testing. However, in terms of herbals themselves, as you know, there's been a renewed interest in natural products for treating different kinds of health conditions. So a lot of the herbals have been found to have efficacy for the different types of diseases and conditions as indicated in the Ayurvedic medical text. With Ayurveda, in terms of working with the doshas and eating towards the doshas, I would say that, the proof is in the pudding. So when I have worked with people, I've worked with people who have been infertile and they've been going through IVF treatment. I've changed what they're eating and given them some good herbal protocols, and they've gotten pregnant after years of trying to. And, you can see it. The sperm measures, it moves faster, it's stronger. The eggs are stronger because, when they do IVF, they look at the health of the eggs. So I feel pretty certain that when I use these protocols, I am helping people, because when people go in and they get their blood pressure measured, it's down. They sleep better. They eat better. They live better. But in terms of rigorous Western testing and clinical trials, Ayurveda has not, in terms of lifestyle management, it has not been subjected to that.
Yes, I know what you're saying about the herbs, because I know even in Europe, a lot of medical practitioners use herbal supplements and compositions, or whatever you would call them, to help even in just regular hospitals. You have a book that's about breast cancer and preventing and improving your health with breast cancer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The name of the book is Fighting for Our Tits. And I know I've gotten some really interesting reactions to that title. But what it's about is it's about not breast cancer. What it's about is I'm a research rat and I'm very research based. So the book is heavily research based, and it covers studies done on fluoride and how fluoride in our water can cause cancer. It talks about foods and diets and all. There's a lot of connection between diet and cancer in general, and breast cancer in particular, alcohol as well. I also have a section where I talk about all different kinds of things you can do just to boost your health. And, just keeping your immune system strong, keeping your emotions balanced, finding the happiness in your life, learning to relax, dancing. I have a whole section where I talk about a fellow by the name of Coley, who came over to the States. He was a doctor here, and he got really interested in disease. And he learned that it's called Colles toxins. He learned that by creating a cocktail and inserting it into a tumor, that he could kill the cancer tumor. And his again, it was called Colles toxins. His vaccine cocktail was used for a long, long time in cancer treatment, and it would completely get rid of the tumor, and it never came back. So there's a lot of different ways to look at what we're doing in terms of staying healthy enough, and looking at some of the environmental toxins that we're subjected to every day. I talk about perfume, and synthetic perfume is a serious endocrine disruptor. It does all kinds of things to your endocrine system. I talk about antiperspirants, and there has been no proof that antiperspirants or deodorants cause breast cancer. But I kind of talk about letting go of some of the things that we use in our modern life that could possibly contribute to disease, and finding more natural things to put in their place.
So you also mentioned that you are qualified in Chinese medicine. Can you talk about how that's different from Ayurveda and what you do in that? You mentioned the tongue thing, but...
Right. Well, I've studied Chinese medicine, and really I'm a lot more versed in the Ayurveda than I am in the Chinese medicine, but they have a lot of similarities. They both use tongue diagnosis, they use pulse diagnosis, they do the same thing with having a client sit down and they talk about different lifestyle factors and things like that. Like Ayurveda, they believe the seasons have an impact on disease and the doshas. They believe in food as a treatment for different diseases. I think maybe one of the main differences that I have observed between Chinese medicine and Ayurveda is the use of acupuncture, which is in Ayurveda, you will not find needles. There's acupuncture. They're called marma points, where a practitioner can push on the points to help clear energy blockages, but they don't use the needles. I've done a lot of acupuncture personally on myself with a qualified acupuncturist, and I have found it to be absolutely amazing in terms of helping with long-term problems. I had eczema so bad that I thought it was going to eat me alive, and this is when I first really got interested in Chinese medicine. And it took me a year, but after a year, I'm eczema free for the last 10 years. And I had tried all kinds of Western medicines to help me with that problem without any success whatsoever. So to me, one of the biggest differences is the use of acupuncture. And in Chinese medicine, they use Qigong and other types, Tai Chi, other types of energy movement rather than yoga as another way, as another avenue to wholeness. But the focus and intent is a little different than the focus and intent of yoga.
So with acupuncture, what do you think it is about acupuncture that helps? Because I've heard of what you're talking about, like the acupressure where there's certain points in your body, but what is the acupuncture actually doing?
What the acupuncture does is it goes to places in the system. They're called meridians. In yoga, they're called nadis, but their energy, we look like, if you've ever seen a tree branch, our nervous system looks kind of like a network of tree branches. So energy, electromagnetic energy, runs along those lines called meridians in Chinese medicine. The idea is just like if you have water flowing through a creek and a bunch of twigs and logs begin to block up the flow of the water, then the water backs up and becomes stagnant. So if you clear that away, then the water flows again. And so the use of acupuncture and also acupressure to a degree, the idea is to remove the blockage in that point of the energy system so that the energy can flow again and reestablish harmony in the body.
So they determine what's blocked based on your symptoms?
Based on your symptoms and based on your pulse. They can tell a lot about you based on your pulse.
So are all acupuncturists trained in Chinese medicine, or is it that Chinese medicine people are trained in acupuncture and there's also regular people who just do acupuncture?
Yes, but yes, people can do acupuncture without having any training whatsoever in Chinese herbals or the traditional Chinese medicine called TCM. So there are practitioners. I went for a long time to a chiropractor around here. I just loved him to death. And he'd been trained in acupuncture. And so he would do acupuncture, but he didn't know anything about Chinese herbals or pulse diagnosis or even looking at the tongue. But I would tell him what was going on, and he would break out his trusty needles, and really good things would happen.
And it's not painful?
There can be times if it hits an energy block where you're going to notice a discomfort. But a lot of times, the first time I had acupuncture, I had something like 11 needles. And that's when I first started my treatment for the eczema. And I felt almost like I was high. I just felt like it went whoosh. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. It was like whoosh. And I felt this instant sense of deep relief it's hard to explain what it feels like, but I knew something really awesome had just happened to me.
Yeah, that would be my only thought is, does it hurt to have someone, but they're probably not really big needles. They're little bitty needles.
Yeah, they're fine needles. And, again, unless it hits a point where there's a severe blockage, you're not even going to feel much of a little sting. And when they come out, you almost never bleed. But it's just an incredible practice.
So we've talked about a lot today, and I want to kind of distill it down and have you kind of talk about how this information that we've talked about can be used by the listeners in their day-to-day life.
One of the quickest ways to begin to use Ayurveda itself and the system of Ayurveda is to go online and start reading. There's a wonderful website, Banyan Botanicals, and that's BANYANBOTANICALS.com, Banyan Botanicals. They have a dosha test. They go through and they have a little book about Ayurveda that you can download for free. They also have people that you can talk to and consult with if you have a question about using herbals for some of the conditions that you have. Deepak Chopra, a lot of people have heard of him. He also, on his website, has a lot of different information about Ayurveda. So just getting out there and beginning to poke around in it a little bit, figuring out kind of what your dosha is a great place to start. And Ayurveda is like yoga. I've studied Ayurveda now for going on 11 years, and what I know wouldn't even fill a thimble in the larger context of what's out there to learn about it. The same is true of yoga, and I've been doing it for 22 years. So there's a lot of information, but you don't have to have all of that to learn how to bring it into your life and use it to benefit yourself. You can stay at a very high level with it and still see incredible results.
What are some of the biggest changes that you commonly give people to make about their diet?
Stop drinking ice water or anything with ice. Ice or anything cold, ice cream, cold drinks, harm the digestion. So when in Ayurveda, there's a belief, just like in Chinese medicine, that there's heat in the stomach. It's called Agni in Ayurveda. So there's a fire that burns. So let's say you're eating your yummy, yummy lunch and you're chasing it down with a cold Coke or a cold glass of water. Well, so you eat and the food goes, and that fire in your stomach, which burns the food to turn it into nutrition, is nice and high. And then you take a couple of drinks off your big gulp and you completely put the fire out. So it makes it very hard for the body to take that food that you've just eaten and transform it into nutrients that then go into the bloodstream to build tissue, to build blood, to build your brain power. You put your fire out. So in Ayurveda and in Chinese medicine, they recommend consuming soup, or like my husband and I, we drink hot water with our meals. And every now and again, having something a little cold is okay, but ice cream, anything that's really cold harms the stomach. It harms the fire, and it harms your ability to digest your food and have it assimilate in the system. So people say, but I can't give up my ice. I can't give up my cold water. So you can take it one step at a time. You know, that's a really good way to make changes. But that's one of the first things that I recommend. The second thing I recommend is to always eat your largest meal at lunch, because our bodies are like the rest of nature. So in the morning, it's kind of cool. Our Agni, our stomach fire, is kind of low. We're just waking up. Our sun is just coming up in our stomach. So eating something warm but light. And then at noon, our fire is like, it's blazing, just like, you know, the noon sun. And then in the evening, the sun is going down, so we're cooling down again. So the second piece of advice I give people right off the bat is to eat your largest meal at anywhere between 11:30 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. So I like to ask all my guests, since we always talk about food, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food is spinach. I love spinach. Any way you slice it, dice it, cook it, raw, in everything, cooked soups. I just love spinach.
I can't say that I agree, but, but I love it. I love that you're passionate about spinach. But yeah. No, I like to eat spinach. I do like to mix it with lettuce, and then sometimes like in a dish on the stove, like if I'm making some chicken, and I'll put some spinach in there and wilt it and add it to the sauce. That's always good. Well, Lola, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. I know my listeners learned a lot about different types of medicine, the Ayurveda, the Chinese medicine, and yoga. So if listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
They can check me out on my website at yogalola.com, YOGALOLA, yogalola.com, or they can email me at lola@yogalola.com. And if they're interested in my book, they can check out my website, Lola Scarborough.com. I know you transcribed. Would you like for me to spell it out, or do you want me to just
spell it out?
Okay. So it's LOLASCARBOROUGH.com.
Great. So guys, this has been another great episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast that is all about learning more so you can do more with nutrition in your life.
You've just listened to an episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast. Be sure to get more information about this week's episode at www.nutritionexpertspodcast.com. Tune in next time for another great conversation with a nutrition expert and expand your personal knowledge in the field of nutrition, one conversation at a time.